Welcome to this Q&A. I got a lot of questions and therefore I already have to apologize because I'm not able to answer them all in this video, but I try to reach out to you via the comments if your question is not included in this video. I want to thank the people for submitting their questions. The 50k subscriber special Q&A is starting right now. Tiago asks, which Dutch soccer team do you support? None. Don't like soccer. Sorry. Have you ever considered making videos in partnership with other history teacher or YouTube channels? I did a collab with Tipsy Fish History about Luxembourg and World War I. You can click right here or here for the link. And I also took part in several YouTuber collaboration series. I'll put a pinned comment down below. You can check that out. Benjamin asks, have you ever had any reactions from students related to this channel and how did they react? And have you used any of your History Hustle videos in your lessons? Well, yes, I did use my videos in class, and this also answers the question of Carter Kelly. I don't really think my students watch my English videos that often because I get rarely students coming up to me and saying, hey, we saw your video about this topic and that was really interesting. The only time they do come up to me is to congratulate me with the amounts of subscribers that I reached. Robert asks, how has this year restricted you traveling to locations of forgotten World War II battles? I was happy I was able to travel this summer and be able to shoot 17 videos, so that was amazing. I did have plans to visit Prague last autumn, but that got cancelled. And I hope I can travel again in May. Maxime asks, will you be making videos on larger World War II or even World War I battles? If I visit the location, I certainly will. I actually did cover the Battle of Verdun, for example. I'll put a pinned comment. Arthur M, longtime follower, first of all, congratulations, thanks. As for the question, do you plan to also cover interesting and possibly less known underappreciated units on the Allied side, like some colonial troops or forces in exile? I feel you're hinting on the Poles. And yes, I'll eventually cover that. For some reason, my interest is more towards the Axis units, and I think a lot of people have that. Why we have that, I don't know. Perhaps we people have a fascination for the bad guys or anything. But I do like to cover the Allied formations as well. Jolly Green Giant, do you make each video twice in both the Dutch language and English or just in English? Back in the day I did both, but now I only make a Dutch video whenever I think I'll use it in class. Can you make a video about the invasion of Belgium in May 1940? Heinz Guderian asks. Yes, that will be made. And guess what? The script is also done. But here's the bad news. I want to cover this on location at Eben Emael. That is what's gonna happen, and I will not cover this behind my desk. So it might take a while. Patience is what you need, my friend. What is your favorite form of collecting information for your videos? And he also asked me if I can become his history teacher. All right, thanks. Back in the day when I started out, I obviously used Wikipedia a lot. Now I try to use books. I prefer ebooks because it's really convenient to look up certain phrases or words or names. I also like these series about the Osprey publishing. It's like these sweet, thin books with that contain just the right amount of information, especially for the formations series. This is really good. And Resaf, also a long-time follower, will you cover the topic around nationalism in Europe during 1848? Eventually that will be covered. I can't tell you when. Abelab asks, what is your favorite video that you've made and why? Also congrats. Thanks. Last Q&A, I said that the video about the Japanese invasion of the Dutch East Indies was my favorite because I have good memories of it when making it. But now I used another measure, and that is how often do I rewatch that video. And then do have to say that my favorite video is, and think nobody will expect this, it's this one. Remember this one? It was about Germany and the end of the Eastern Front of World War I. And the reason why I find this video so fascinating to rewatch is that the tables turned so quickly and so often in a time period that I often forget about it and have to rewatch, like, oh yeah, what exactly did happen? If you could choose any year or age in which you were born, what would that be? I would just leave it as it is. The more I read about history, the more I realize that I'm extremely lucky that I live today. Congrats on 50k, thanks. Have you ever visited Belgium? If so, where? Yes, because I grew up in Roosendaal, it's in the south of the Netherlands, close to the Belgian border. So I visited Antwerp a lot. I have family in Brussels, so I went there a couple of times. I went to Leuven, as well as Ghent, Brugge and Liège. Mike West is also very enthusiastic, thanks. Question, if you got a time machine, where and when and who you talking to? I will travel back to the second half of the 1920s, before the Great Depression hits, and I would visit Rotterdam, because the old city doesn't exist today anymore. I would visit Utrecht, the city I'm currently living in, and see what that was like back in the 1920s, and then I would take the train to Berlin and see what that city used to look like before the war, and try to make it out to Königsberg, if the Poles let me through the Danzig corridor, because I also like to see how that city looked like. Which also answers the questions of James. Hello sir, I know you are Dutch. Have you ever heard of Holland, Michigan? It is a town settled by Dutch immigrants. I only know about the name, but that's all I can tell you about. Will you teach other history besides World War II or no? Also love your work. Well, thanks. Well, thing is, I think my channel is basically compensating for what I'm unfortunately not able to do in my teaching job, which is going in depth on the Second World War. See, most of the times I don't teach about World War II nor World War I. See, I do have to teach about all kinds of other topics from history, and I like doing that as well, but World War II, for my personal opinion, gets more and more marginalized, and yeah, I don't find that a good thing. Jesse Papaver, he asked, what is your scariest travel story? I believe I talked about that in a previous Q&A, but I'm not sure. And it wasn't really that scary. I was in Bali 2016, and I came back from the club, and I walked back to the hostel together with a girl from Sweden, I remember, and all of a sudden there were like two guys on this motorcycle, and they just drove by, and one of these boys snatched the purse of this girl. So that was, well, for her was a pity, because her credit card and her passport were all in that purse, and it also ruined the mood. It was also a pity. Comrade Skeever, he asks, how is the COVID-19 situation in the Netherlands, and what age group are your students? Age group 11 till 18, give or take. And how the situation is here? Well, I think pretty much similar as in other West European states. We're now in the second so-called wave lockdown and stuff like that. And yeah, hope stuff will turn out well soon enough. Do you have a wife or a girlfriend? Nope, I'm not married and I don't have a girlfriend. See, if I would have had a girlfriend, I wouldn't have the time to put in the channel, right? To deliver all that content for you. So therefore I can only say that if there are single women watching this right now, I can only say, don't bother. The Luxembourgish Empire, he asked, which area of history is your favorite to teach and why? It's World War II, World War I, and also the Russian Revolution. I think because this was also on a big scale, and there's a lot of fascinating, interesting aspects you can point out. And do I have any pets at home? No, I don't. Dogface, what is the most interesting war-related location you visited? That must be Dien Bien Phu in Vietnam, where the 1954 battle between the French and the Viet Minh took place is in this valley, and it's really cool to actually reach this point. There aren't much remnants left. There are some reconstructed barracks and trenches, so it was really cool to visit that. What history related channels on YouTube do you watch? That is the Great War channel, the World War II Week by Week channel, and the Armchair Historian. Piet Hein, how many history books have you read in total? You must have an impressive collection, and congrats on your 50k subscribers. And yes, long time follower, I've been following you since 2.5k subs or so. Yeah, thanks for still being on board. I don't know how many books I read. I do know that I did have a lot of books, but a lot of books I didn't read, didn't use. I just basically either sold them or gave them away. And I also dumped a lot of books at school. It is so that not for every topic I read a full book. I sometimes do that, but a lot of times I just pick the information I need, and that's why I like ebooks so much. Carl asks, congratulations, thanks. How many countries have you visited? And what are the places you would like to visit in the future? I think I keep losing count, but I think it's between 30 and 40 countries I've visited. And I would like to go to Croatia, because there's a lot of content I want to shoot there. Can you speak any languages other than Dutch and English? Ik spreek Deutsch, es geht. Je parle un petit peu le français. Who designed your channel's logo? My brother. And Harsh, he asks, are you into video games? I am into video games, but not the games you think I'm in. I don't play these like strategy, World of War, tanks games. No. I also don't play like Battlefield 1. I played it a couple of times. Yeah, no. Actually, what I play now is Zelda Breath of the Wild. I really like that game. It's amazing, and it's mostly because I'm a big Zelda fan. And a while back, I downloaded via Steam. I purchased the old Half-Life, and it was also a pretty cool experience. Scott asks, my question is, what did other fascist parties around the world think of the Nazi Party? I still want to dive into that with a new video series called Factions. To give you a heads up, and I also talked about Norway, for example, and there was a Dutch NSB. The problem these parties had after the German takeover was that these parties were very nationalist, right? So if another fascist country like takes your country, on one hand you're happy, but on the flip side, because you're so nationalist, you want to put your country on the first place, but the invader puts his country on the first place, and that gives some friction between these parties. But I definitely want to investigate this and do more research about it for future videos. A while ago, TIK made a video about Germans being socialist, and it seemed quite convincing. But then a bit later I was watching World War II in real time, and Indy was like, the Germans were not socialist. So I was just curious, what is your opinion? A lot of people, they comment on this. First of all, this is not a theoretical channel, so I'm not diving into theories about politics that much. I did watch both videos also, and for me it's a really interesting debate, but it doesn't interest me enough to dive fully in it. The way I teach it to my pupils, which is also like obviously a simplified version because you can't go all in depth, is like this. If you look at it on the political spectrum from left to right, if you take the farther you move from the middle, the more totalitarian you become. It basically goes a little bit overboard when you go to the extreme left, where you get like something like anarchism. But yeah, let's just leave that out of the picture. So you have like communism and on the extreme left, and National Socialism on the extreme right. And the biggest difference is that the National Socialists, they point out the difference between people, in this case races, and those on the extreme left, they emphasize that everybody is equal. However, both are totalitarian in nature, so therefore they have a lot of similarities. That's basically the way I look at it. It's a big debate, a lot of theory going around it, so If you have another opinion on it, I respect it, but I don't really care either. Nicolas asked, did all SS foreign volunteers go to the Eastern Front? No, the SS Hanscha Division was stationed in France, I believe. And what's your favorite of the Third Reich's foreign volunteer units? Well, I want to replace favorite by most interesting. I'd say, yeah, the Dutch, because I'm Dutch. What were the reasons that the Korean War of 1950 got into a stalemate as soon as the United Nations turned out to have the upper hand? The Chinese joined the fray and thus the balances became kinda even, and that's why it became a stalemate. And why did Belgium did any colonizing? Well, they did. The Congo. Reint, he asks, how would a modern genocide look like in Europe in the future? Reint is a student of mine and we did a paper about the genocide in Srebrenica in Bosnia. And I think he's basically asking how would that, if in the future it would happen, how would it look like? I think kind of like the same as we've seen before. I do have to mention that I don't find it likely to happen. And I also hope that. Daniel, he asks, as a historian, does the ascendancy of China, an authoritarian global superpower, concern you? How do you think about this, particularly in relation to declining thrust in American power? I haven't read too much about this, but this is just what I say right now. I'm firmly against what the Chinese government does to the Uyghurs in the west of the country. It's totally unacceptable. Having said that, I am happy that China is exporting its economy, but not its ideology. Because I believe that ideology can lead to devastating wars, as we have seen in history. And that is not the thing China is exporting. And I'm grateful for that. And another question is, how many countries did the US in the last 20 years invade or mingled with its affairs? And what were the results of that? And how many countries did China invade? And Ricky asks, what actually happened to the bicycles confiscated by the Germans from the Netherlands? Where did they go? I've seen moving images where Germans, when they left the Netherlands after the war was over, they are cycling out of the country. So I presume these bikes went to Germany. I do believe that the bikes that were confiscated earlier and shipped off to Germany, they basically used the material for their war industries. And that was it. I hope you enjoyed this Q&A. Apologies if I did not include your question. I think that's the luxury of having 50k subscribers. It is not possible to answer all the comments any longer, although I do still make efforts doing that. There will be one video for this year. I'm not going to tell you where this video is about, but you might have a clue. See you later.